everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you are, wherever you are in the world. We are so happy that you are here. I'm Bernadette Leal with Sembradores de Luz. And what a joy to be here to share about the practice of the gospel at home. Sembradores de Luz create this amazing work, videos, resources to help parents, educators, families about the importance of being a light in the world. Spiritually speaking, with lessons, with articles, and you name. Just go to our website and you see how many important and fun things we have. So one of the things the Sembrador is doing and is the family team is creating these videos, this chat about the practice of the gospel at home. And today is the episode number 7. And please remember to subscribe, go to our YouTube channel, choose videos, and you will see all the amazing videos since the number 1. And we're having 2 more. But today is very, very, very special. We will be talking about how can we do the gospel at home with children? This is something that we hear a lot. What do we do? How can we have them engaged? What if we have different ages in one room and some parents are like, please help me? Well, if that's your case, don't worry about it because we have the answers for you. We'll have actually several suggestions. And today we have 2 amazing guests. You have Claudia and Ligia Carvalho. So let me introduce a little bit about them. I will start with Ligia. Ligia Carvalho, I'm going to read. Ligia Carvalho serves as the secretary and coordinator of the Spiritist Education Department and Bookstore at the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey. As a co-founder, she continues to lead the center alongside a dedicated group of friends. She's an active participant in the Spiritist movement in the USA, often serving as a speaker. With over 15 years of experience as a licensed therapist, Ligia has dedicated her career to supporting children and adolescents facing behavior and mental health challenges. Additionally, she has worked as a hospice social worker, providing compassionate care to terminally ill patients. Above all, Ligia treasures her role as a wife and loving mother to her daughter and son, considering them her greatest blessings. Wow. Welcome, Ligia. It's really good to know a bit about you. Right? And now I will introduce our next guest. That's Claudia. My goodness, Gláucia. I'm in San Diego. Here is early. I haven't had coffee yet, so I'm waking up.
No worries, babe.
So, Gláucia Martin Porath has embraced Spiritism since her adolescence, contributing to multiple Spiritist centers worldwide. Currently volunteering at the Spiritist Center Nocelad in San Diego. She continues to share its teachings and support the spiritual growth in her community. Professionally, Gláucia has been a mental health therapist for over 20 years, working with children and families in both Canada and the US. She also has experience in education and social entrepreneurship, emphasizing gender equality at home. Gláucia is married to Jason, and together they have 2 sons. one in college and another one preparing to attend college. Guided by Spiritist principles, she strives each day to be a positive role model for her family and help others experience the transformative power of the philosophy. Whoa.
Good morning, Vic. Good morning, Ligia. Good morning, everybody at home. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm sure everybody's pleasure, whomever is with us today. So, are you ready to start? Because we have really good questions.
Let's go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And I will start with Gláucia. Considering all your background, your job and what you do, so you're very experienced working with children, but not all of us are lucky. We may not know about, child education, childhood period. So can you help us understand a little bit, what does the childhood period mean for the spirit?
Absolutely. First of all, I just want us to remember the importance of family. It is through our families and it is through receiving our children in the heart of our families that we're really helping the spirit to become ready for this incarnation. So, as many of you know, probably, or for the ones that don't, in the Spiritism doctrine, we believe that the soul comes in several times in different incarnations to grow and become a better spirit. So, with that said, you have to think about that within the family, we are bound to educate and shape the spirit to grow the good qualities that they need for this incarnation, and then almost like take out the weeds, like the inclinations that they um, have come with from the other past lives. So they are a very kind of soft, like a Play-Doh. I brought a Play-Doh to show it to you guys. It's like at the beginning from 0 to 7, they like kind of a soft little Play-Doh, right? Ready to be shaped by us, the adults, not only the parents, but then also beyond the family, the educators, our community, the churches, the spiritist centers. So this is a crucial time, especially from 0 to 7, that the spirit, the child is open to receive our little seeds of love, right? To grow like this beautiful little plant in the world and harvest after the fruits, the good fruits. So by practicing the gospel at home, what we do is to create a space where we are modeling for the children this part of their lives where they are going to understand what the spirit is, what are they here for, what's important for them to build into their adulthood. So we as parents, right, can then role model for them throughout doing the gospel at home, but throughout mainly our behaviors, what that looks like. But from 0 to 7, again, as I said, the spirit is so flexible, is malleable, like the Play-Doh, right? The inclinations and the qualities of them are going to be shown, but the spirit is more kind of in the spiritual world, like the whole person is more in the spiritual world. And then by 7, it's kind of all the old tendencies from past lives, they kind of settle in. So that's why it's so important for all of us to remember that's a crucial part for us to mold them and to what we can see that it's going to be important for them to develop, right? So I think that's mainly this moral progress, the plasticity of the soul. It's a crucial time for us to embedded the good seeds in their lives. So that's why the importance of the gospel at home throughout childhood. So.
Oh, I love it. I love that you brought the Play-Doh, because visually you can see that's what we are doing, as a teacher, that's constantly, molding. And that's sad that sometimes we let the TV, the social media, or whatever outside there mold the child. So I was wondering, Ligia, would you like to add anything to this amazing topic about the childhood period for the spirit? How is that important? Tell us.
Sure. I mean, I think Claudia, was right on point.
Gláucia, see,
we are. Oh, see, you got me to say Claudia and Gláucia. Oh, Gláucia, I don't even know it's written there, but that's what see, the formation and the influence, right? But Gláucia said it very well. We have, as parents, right, we have the ability to mold and strengthen what we want them to continue to develop, and help them to address those negative inclinations to transform them. But like she also said, reincarnation means we come with this baggage of information and baggage of experiences. So I think one of the difficulties that a lot of times parents face is that when they're dealing with challenges per se, right, or these negative inclinations, we put in our minds that we have to change our children and we have to help them change. We have to help them change their behaviors, but not necessarily who they are. And I think that's the difference in the nuance that we need to think of when looking at our children as eternal spirits. For example, you may have a child that's belligerent and doesn't listen, or doesn't want to follow rules, doesn't want to follow directions, and you think, I have to work with this child, my son, my daughter, and we think that we have to help them listen and we have to change their way of interacting with the world. But that doesn't mean changing that tendency of being leaders and being unafraid and being willing to challenge the status quo. So really what we want to change is how they utilize those skills, because we're definitely going to get individuals there in the process of evolving and learning. So you want to utilize the gospel at home, the gospel of Jesus, to really help them reflect on those skills or tendencies and how to guide them to use it towards good. So you really want to have this, what we call strengths perspective. You want to change how they use the behaviors, but not necessarily change the behaviors, because the behavior in itself may not be a negative thing. So in that moment of the 0 to 6, we establish the baseline of, let's say, the ethics standards for when they get older. They apply those ethics and standards to whom they are, right? So that we don't risk pathologizing our children when really there's nothing wrong with them per se, right? To use, vulgar language, is really how they use those resources that they have. So it's really embracing our children, loving them, accepting, for whom they are, but teach them how to use it for the betterment of themselves in society. So that moment that, I love the Play-Doh, so you can have the visual, how important it is that we really put in all those good seeds that Gláucia said, so that when they come to be autonomous and independent, they are who they are, but in a healthy and positive way.
I love that you said about not changing the child. I just had a workshop, and that's one of the things that they said. We have the tendency, teachers, parents, have to change, and they said, well, embrace the child, who the child is, and work on the kindness, modeling. It said kindness is non-negotiable in the classroom. Okay, I accept who you are, the personality. You don't even have to be friends with everybody, because it's okay if you don't want to play with this friend, but you still have to be kind. So it was like, oh yeah, that's true, and labeling. So as we talk about that seems already there, Ligia, Another question we have is kids get bored when we are doing the gospel at home. It's very hard. They don't want to do it, or the behavior. And how can we create a really nice environment that's very welcoming for children? How can we do that? Do you have any suggestions? And then Gláucia will help us later. I have to say your name
Please
slow.
do. I mean, I think first things, it's all about setting up expectations. I mean, kids are not always going to be entertained. They're not always going to be, you may take them to the movies and maybe they like the movie, maybe the movie's boring. Kids and teenagers, they're going to challenge. So I think it's first, you got to set up expectations and understand why you're doing the gospel at home, right? And what's the goal? So a book for reference, The Messengers, the guiding spirit, the instructor there, he tells us that, and I'm going to read it for us, the gospel at home is a practice to bring protection, right? So the home will receive protection, and inferior spirits are going to be shunned away. When we're doing the gospel at home, right, we're praying, we're talking about Jesus, we're elevating the energy, the vibration in our home. So we're creating sort of a magnetic energy around our home. So the goal is we're creating a better living space. We're creating a positive energy so that our relationships can improve, our communication can improve, our behaviors can improve, right? Not just of our children. And in the gospel at home is a moment where really we're filling up the battery of a home life, right? We're working, we're going to school, people are sick, and our family battery life just kind of runs down. When we have the gospel at home, it's like the recharge that we bring it up to keep that environment, right? So if we remember the goal of why we're doing the gospel at home, then first of all, it creates motivation because parents, they have to be determined. And the other thing is in Matthew 18:20, Jesus is said to have said, "For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there in the midst of them." So once again, what's the objective of the gospel at home? So that we can be joined together to talk about Jesus, but also to co-share and experience positive moments, positive energies, right? So if you already remember as parents, because we have to set the standards, right? That's the objective. That's what I want to translate to my kids. Then I have to start on the premises. If your child has been doing the gospel at home since they were born, when they're 14, they're used to it. When they're 8, they're used to it. If they're new and you're starting now, you're now building habits. So if we go back to the first question about, setting the baseline and preparing your kids and accepting them, it's natural that children, they challenge. And teenagers and preteens, where they think they know it all, they're going to challenge. So yes, some days may be boring. Some days they're not feeling up to it. So like I said, setting up the expectations, we want to make it interesting. We want to make it entertaining. But that may take some time. And there may be days that it won't be. And it's okay. But some of the things that we have to do, or we should do, right? That's the recommendation to help create a more welcoming environment is we must prepare. As parents, we have to anticipate. We know our children. If you have more than one, they're not the same. You have children that are quiet and focused. Others, they may have hyperactivity. Maybe they have learning disabilities. They may have whatever the situation may be. So you have to prepare thinking about those tendencies that Gláucia mentioned. What are my children's tendencies, right? So the first thing is, the gospel at home is something that the recommendation is you do it for 15, at most 30 minutes, depending on your kids, maybe 15. And it's recommended that you do it on the same day of the week at the same time every week. So it's a commitment, right? The first thing would be pick a day and time when your kids aren't going to be hungry or when they're not going to be tired. If it's nap time, it's not going to work. If it's dinner time, it's not going to work. If it's a day where they already had multiple activities, as a day that they have soccer or sports, they're going to be tired. Maybe they want, my my daughter, she's 11, she's like, Mom, I want to have some time for myself. So you want to pick a day where it's going to present less conflict to their little schedules. We think, oh my God, they were playing and they were at school, what do they know? But still, that's the reality of their life. And adding one more thing, you want to take into consideration their day and how tiresome it was. So you want to make something that's convenient for all. So that way they're more likely to participate, right? The other thing is be consistent. If you're starting at noon, they might give you pushback. It doesn't matter how many blings and glitters and lights you bring, because you know what? They maybe want to be watching TV, or maybe that used to be their free time, or whatever the situation may be. So you want to be consistent. And I know, it varies in families, the parenting styles, the participation. But in my home, I make it like we have several commitments. I have to do certain things for you. You have to do certain things for me, and we have to do certain things for family. So at my home, this is something that we do. We do the gospel at home. Other families may have a different perspective, but if you establish that it is an expectation, and if you are consistent with it, and Gláucia also mentioned in the beginning, when we're setting that baseline and addressing that moment that we're molding them, our example. So if you yourself do it every week, you're demonstrating to your kids how important it is, and you teach by example, right?
Right.
And then the other thing too is you want to plan in advance. Some of us may have a natural tendency to do certain things, and that may be something that's easy for you. For most of us, the gospel at home may not be something easy for us to do. So maybe you want to select whatever the reading material that you're going to use in advance, and you read through it and think about, what activities are you going to use with it? And open a parenthesis here. We're not saying that this has to be a major project that you have to spend hours over. We're going to later on share some resources to make it really easy. But the bottom line is, you don't want to just, do it at the last moment, improvise. You want to have a reading or scripture, whatever it is, that you're familiar with, so that if they ask you questions, if you're more comfortable answering. And then also, you want to have maybe activities depending how old your kids are. You may want to have Legos so that they can play Legos as reading a story, or maybe Play-Doh. You can incorporating a story with coloring pages. Include activities. Also, don't shun away from electronics and social media. There's several excellent videos. Maybe that day, instead of reading a story or reading a passage, you together watch a 5-10 minute video and then talk about it. So I think the important thing is bring it to their reality, depending how old they are and depending on their inclination. Some kids love arts, others couldn't care less. Others like Play-Doh, others, like I said, maybe Legos. And the other thing too, if you really want to make it welcoming, entertaining, don't make it like it has to be a somber thing. I think we need to learn to differentiate between something that's serious from something that's somber. Serious means thoughtful, we're focusing, we're addressing important topics, but it doesn't mean we can't laugh, we can't joke, we can't play. If we make it somber, meaning it's gloomy, it's grave, or it's something solemn, then really it's not going to be interesting. And that's not what Jesus was. Jesus was joyful and happy, and he brought liveliness to our lives. So you got young kids, one day do a picnic gospel at home, bring snacks, or maybe today you're going to read an adventure story. Instead of sitting around the table, put a cloth over and you're all underneath it in a cavern. It's absolutely okay to be creative and do things. Maybe one day your kid's not so, maybe they're distracted. They're not going to lay down on the couch and read together. It's not the form, it's the message. And if you go back to the of what we're suggesting is, it's remembering we're there to talk about Jesus, pray together, create that environment of welcoming and love and reciprocity and getting along and joy in the family. because we're not joyful all the time. So it doesn't matter where you are or how you do it, as long as you do it together. And like I said, bring snacks, bring a car. It doesn't mean that your kid is not listening. And if they look at you and say, Mom, this is boring. Well, it's boring. You know, maybe next time you bring a subject that it's fun. Challenge them. Let them be a part of it if they're older. And, you know, just talk about Jesus together.
Yeah, that's a great suggestions, which is our next question. You know, some suggestions. As an educator, one thing that we learn, we are constantly assessing the student, right? What they can do directly, formally, or informally. So we can differentiate instruction. So this child learns by music. This child learns better, and getting to know your child, you know, your audience, you'll be more successful and can adjust. I wonder, Gláucia, do you have any more ideas or suggestions that what can we do to engage?
Sure. So I just want to acknowledge, like, Ligia was very thorough about, you know, everything she said. And I think if I have anything else to add would be in terms of making the environment a gospel home welcoming is just connect through love, right? Like you're both saying, this is a special time for your family. Make it fun. Really, like, let the planning be have the children participate in it. You know, your children feel then part of the family. They feel they're integrated. Allow them to participate with ideas at the beginning. So then they are already feeling like that sense of ownership. And by doing that, you really, like, you create connection. Because isn't it what Jesus always did through how did he did gospels at home, right? He did his lectures for millions of people, you know, for several. He did in someone's home, like, you know, like he through story. So jumping into how, you know, how can you make it engaging? So let's, you know, we have Jesus as the best storyteller, the best psychologist in the world. So if we can jump into that wagon and role model his behavior, then let's do storytelling, you know, let's use arts and crafts. Let's use music, songs, like what is it that your child likes? You know, think about now when you're at home, what's their characteristic, what's important to them, because by doing that you are immediately engaging them, like immediately also giving the message, you are important to me, I'm listening to you, right? I'm really listening to who you are, what you like. So that's an immediate connection, because that's what children want. They want to be seen, right? And they want to be seen in your home and acknowledged. And they're going to find it's fun when you let them understand that their opinion is important. What they're doing is important. Just like, you know, having them as young to do family chores and be part. We are a team. So we are a team in the home, not only to do chores and learn responsibility, but also to learn spirituality. So I think those, you know, there are so many things that you could use. There are books. There are the parables that Jesus have that you can use, make it a language appropriate. Also remember, like, your children's developmental stage, not necessarily age, but where are they developmentally right now, you know? So just follow them, like let them be the guide, you know, just like I doing therapy, like I follow the child's lead, follow your children's at home too, because you're going to get to know them. You're going to know again those inclinations about what are they saying? What are their interpretations of the story? What are they feeling? Listen to their feelings, so let them act out the stories, role play, do a tiny role play with them at home through another story, incorporate music and let them ask questions, so, and let them experience also and connect that story to their real lives. What's going on, in that story that's similar what happened to you during recess? Like, when a friend wasn't kind, or, there was bullying, like that will be a space where you're going to get to know so much what happens to your children. So use that in that way, as really family connection, and through, like, Bernadette and Ligia mentioned, like through love, like let that be a fun, loving time for your family.
Great. And the name also, the gospel at home. The gospel at home might be something very difficult or abstract for a child. So you can call Jesus at home. I've known families that say it's time for Jesus at home, right? And you say, what is that? It's time for the gospel at home. It's time for Jesus at home. It's time for Jesus at home. We are so happy. It's time for Jesus at home. Jesus here today. Jesus is here today. Get one of, we are so happy that Jesus is here today. Get some of those songs. For my students, they are very musical. And when I wanted them to do something, cleaning up, sitting down, line up, or be ready, I come up with any song, make this up. And I would keep walking, singing, and they know, oh, and they start following. Why not to Jesus at home? Jesus at home. Yeah. Or today we're going to see Jesus at home, Jesus at home, jumping. Be creative. The music, I'm very musical. And the music of the spirit, make this fun. And now let's get one last question before we go to discussions and add more stuff. Ligia, you talk about books. And this is another problem because, I'm going to say problem is a little bit challenging. We have tons of material for children in other languages, specifically in Portuguese. It's in Spanish too. Mm-hmm. But in English, we don't have a lot of spiritist material. And does it have to be a spiritist books? What do we do? Like, I'm going to do the gospel at home. And by the way, we talk a lot about spiritism because Sembradores is based on this philosophy. But you don't have to follow spiritist teachings to bring light and Jesus into your house. Right? This world needs more Jesus. Needs more love.
Yes, our main goal here is obviously, we focus on the spiritist doctrine. But if somebody who's a non-spiritist, but it's a Christian and they want to do the gospel at home, please take all these recommendations because the ultimate goal is let's bring Jesus into our hearts and our families, right?
Right.
So, like you said, the challenge is there's a plethora of references and resources in Portuguese, but it's limited when it comes to English. And then you got to consider different ages and all of that. So I'm going to just, mention a few resources. And I think ultimately it's about adapting. That's why we said before, part of the work is prepare, right? If you're going to use a certain book and it's not necessarily a spiritist book, read it in advance so you can see catchwords or catchphrases that you may need to adjust, or things that you need to further explain, or, whatever the situation may be, so that you can present the perspective of Spiritism doctrine. But either way, at the end of the day, the message is going to be the love of Jesus, right? So I'm just going to sort of just mention a few that I personally use and I like it. And like I said, I adapted. So if you're looking for Christian books, right, you have the VeggieTales books. They're super cute, and they're all about vegetables and all about, it's going to talk about forgiveness and love, and it's going to talk about God, and it's usually going to bring a small passage of the Bible, but it's going to be something simple because it's for small kids. So usually we don't even have to adapt. You just further explain, or maybe you add a concept that may be linked to it that, you can use. So there's a plethora of different books, from VeggieTales. Another well-known too that I really enjoy and that I use a lot, it's the Bernstein Bears. Once again, it's all about Christian values, everyday values. This one was about Valentine's and teaching you to love your neighbor as yourself. So it's really cute. This is a different one. And then there's like a bunch of other Christian books that you can look, and they all bring the moral of Jesus Christ. So like I said, you can read it as a story reading with your child. And then, ask that child, your son or daughter, what did you understand? What do you think you meant in this part? Or how could you handle that if it happened to you? And have a little conversation. And in it, you can include afterwards, if you're going to read like this one, that you're going to talk about Valentine's lessons, then you can bring a worksheet, right? Or, those fill in the blanks. You have, God loves you. Sorry, let's pull this out. So like this is a God loves you, and then different phrases. Show God's love by, the greatest commandment is, I can love my family by, if they're a little older, there's, word searches. And these things you can either download for free from the internet, or their store. I'm from New Jersey. I don't know if you guys have it there, but you can look it in the internet. It's called Hobby Lobby.
Yes.
It has a lot of Christian material. So all of these I've purchased at Hobby Lobby for really, really inexpensive prices. You can also, Marshalls, TJ Maxx, you always see books like these. First Prayers, or God is good all the time. God made you nose to toes. So you read the story, right? And it's going to talk about how God made you and all these wonderful things, or how God is good all the time. And then you can talk about, so what does it mean when you have a bad day? Or when somebody, says something hurtful to you. And you talk about that, if somebody did something negative, it wasn't God's creation, but that child, maybe they're going through a tough time, or maybe they haven't met God yet, or maybe it's an opportunity for you to learn to forgive. You have one of the Lord's Prayers. So you pick books like these, and they're like a one reader sitting, these are for little kids. You have for older kids, you can talk all about Jesus and the different, passages and moments of Jesus' life. I have some more books here for maybe older kids. If maybe you're not as familiar with Spiritism, but you are familiar with the Bible, it can help you if you get something like this, the Bible stories. You read a story in advance, and then you do a little research. There's a website that's really great called Kardecpedia that gives you for free. You can download all the basic books of Spiritism, the Spirit's book, the Gospel, which are the primary ones that we use. But also, if you do a search, it not only tells you where to find it, but it brings you the text, so you can actually get it and read it yourself, and you can learn a little bit more. And like I said before, you don't want to make this into like a major project that's going to overwhelm you. These are just suggestions depending on your knowledge, your interest, your time. We have other books like these, Gospel 101. These for preteens and teens is excellent. A little book about the Fox sisters. There's another couple of ones of this series. I just left it at the center, so I don't have it with me. Spiritism 101, that it can help you actually learn about Spiritism. We have some Spiritist that is in English. Pete the Caterpillar, my good friend Chininha, wrote this book.
Yes.
All for all for one. This one for preteens and teenagers, and for the rest of our lives, has a bunch of little stories with a moral value. And you read the story and discuss, what did you learn? Back to school, it teaches about reincarnation. So it's about you finding resources. This one's a new one. I haven't used it yet. Bible, I mistakenly bought volume 2. But it brings a bunch of facts in really colorful and so I can open it, like resource and colorful and pictures. It can be like a research moment. Like if your kid is interested and it's a kid that likes to research and read, maybe, let's do a study together. Let's learn about something together. And that's the other thing. You don't have to have all the answers. If your kid asks you something and you don't know, and you say, you know what, let's table that for next week and we're going to study together, right? The other thing too is you don't have to use spiritist books if you don't have it. You can use books about ethical behaviors. I love this one. What should Danny do? In this book, something happens, and then Danny has to make a choice. Does he wants to do A or B? And depending on A or B, you flip to the page and you see what happens when he chooses A or when he chooses B. Or you have things like If I Hit at School, or other books that talks about, citizenship. Think of it, citizenship behaviors. And then from there, you extrapolate. Where can you see that about Jesus? Or where did Jesus bring that? Also, I would never tell you to shun away from the basic works of Spiritism, if I find the other one. If you have a preteen or a teenager, remember we talked that the gospel too is about building habits. Your kids now may be young, they don't master the language, they don't know how to read or write, maybe they think, it's boring, but they're gonna evolve and they're gonna grow and they're gonna get older. So if you get them used to reading these books and being familiar with them, even if you just pick a question in the Spirits book, and you read a little piece of, maybe not the entire answer or a perspective, or instead of reading the answer, just read the questions and talk about it in their language so that they're familiar with it. It's a great way of really exposing them. One of the challenges too that Bernadette mentioned, I experience it. So if you have different age frames, right? I have 5 years difference between my kids. So something you can do, for example, you have this book, I Can Be Your Friend. It talks about being friends. All the vegetables are different. They're all good friends. How to be a good friend. And then what you can do is, then you can go to the Gospel According to Spiritism, and chapter here, 11, loving thy neighbor as thyself. And maybe you just read a little piece of the Bible, where it shows here, you shall love the Lord thy God above all things and thy neighbor as thyself. You read a little part, and maybe one of the items of the Spirit's book that talks about love being the first commandment and how you treat others, how you want to be treated yourself. So maybe you read this book first while your teenage kid is bored and your young kid is entertained. Then you give them a coloring sheet or a Lego or a blank piece of paper and tell them to draw their best friend while you read this with your older kid. So you join them together and they're both bored a little and entertained a little. But at the end of the day, everybody did something together. Great. And let's recommend, and there's books like these. These are for kids. Mm-hmm. And it has like a little passage of the Bible and a little, interpretation and recommendation. These are Christians, so you may have to add a perspective, a Spiritist perspective, but it makes it something simple if you're looking to have a more simplistic process. And last but not least, because I know time is running by, there's this little book, Happy Life. It's excellent. Oops, and it flew. And the reading is this or this. It's literally one page. So if you have a preteen or teenager, you can do a reading from here and then have a conversation. And like Gláucia recommended, connect to something that might have happened in the life of your child, or maybe in the life of your family. Maybe, you're talking about forgiveness. And 3 weeks ago, there was a big family conflict. How did we work through forgiving? Have we forgiven? Or maybe, somebody's sick in the home, a family member, a cousin, or whatever it is. And there's a message here about habits. And we talk about our habits. Do we eat healthy? Do we take care of our emotions so our body is not stressed? So once again, I know it's a lot of information and it can seem overwhelming because we have a short period of time, even when I give you a lot of info. But we go back to what Big said, Gláucia said, creating a moment of love. You want to bring the message of Jesus. And if you make it simple, or if you make it simple, as long as you guys are together, talking about Jesus, learning to communicate, the process will grow and become something significant. I mean, I don't want to put Gláucia on the spot, but when we talked, you shared about your experience with your kids and how the gospel and them knowing that you're doing the gospel at home carries it with them. And I think that example, solidifies what we're talking about. Our kids are going to grow. Maybe they'll stay with the gospel. Maybe they won't. Maybe there will other things in their lives. But if you do it with them, that message, being with Jesus, being with that message of love, counting on family to support you, counting on prayer, will carry through their lives and make them better people.
Wow, so much information, books, and you can also just read one page, even though it's a story. But we have just a little bit of time and we have a question. But before we go, Gláucia, from what we know, because we are friends, if you may allow us to share here.
Sure.
Your husband is not as much a spiritist. Now he's getting familiar with. Do you do the gospel at home with him? Because he doesn't come from a Christian background. So Ken is like, in 1 and 2 minutes before the quick question, can you share a little bit?
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And I think it's a good space for me to share my experience in my family, because we are bicultural family. So I actually grew up Catholic, then becoming spiritist, in my adolescence. Then now I married an American Jewish person who had no idea of what spiritism is all about. And so we had to navigate that 2 different cultures, 2 different religions in our family. How we did that was just initially being very respectful of the differences. And of course, like, my husband is not he doesn't practice Judaism, but he was very open to receiving the teachings of Jesus and the understanding of my religion. So with that, we kind of, I raised the kids. My kids are older, like as mentioned in the bio, like 21 in college and almost 18 to go to college. So we raised them by praying every night, doing the gospel, and as they grew, like they grew older, they didn't want to participate anymore. And I respected their opinions and their likes. I'm not a type of person that will force anybody to participate. I do believe, like Ligia was saying, in structure and foundation and beginning when they are young, to create that space that they participate with us. But later on, as they grow older, I also believe in their personal choices. And so how it's important for them to do that. So later on, what happened is, in us navigating these situations, was that I don't remember how many years we've been doing the gospel home, many years. And my husband now, he participates. He actually goes to the Spiritist Center with me, like the English one. Like I go to the Portuguese one, he goes to the English one. And one thing that I do want to add is that this, I know, because the Spiritism gospel is very thick in the language and the understanding. But then I found this little book here. It's The Gospel at Home, and it's from the Allan Kardec Educational Society, and it has it's shortened kind of lessons, and then it has questions in the back to read and discuss with your family. Then it has kind of suggestions on guidelines to include your children to do the study group, and things you can do with your family for charity. So we kind of use this, which helped the whole entire family to participate. But it's a challenge when you have bicultural families, and it's part of life to navigate those and find a way that you can incorporate the spiritual teachings of Jesus in your life. So I hope I answered your question, Ben.
Yes, it's very good to bring that perspective, a different one. My husband too, American, and it took him a long time to get familiar. Saying, look, we are here. He was Catholic, and it still is. And I was raised Catholic, and it's just, okay, let's just talk about the moral values and Jesus, the big JC, like our friend Daniel says, the big JC, God, Jesus Christ.
Totally.
And that's what we do. So we have like 2 minutes, but there was one question that Ligia mentioned, and you can start, Gláucia, but it's very short.
Okay.
Then you mentioned about the child's behavior when we are doing the gospel at home. So for the child that is like not engaged, hating, or the very, very challenging behavior, that's like, I don't know, this is bad. And then Ligia said, well, a challenging behavior is not necessarily a bad thing. And some parents, they go, what? We are talking about Jesus. We are trying to pray. My child is bad. Some parents label their child bad. And you don't see this way. I don't see this way. Can you just quickly just mention how it's not bad? What? Let's say, you want to, Gláucia, quick on that, or Ligia? No, I don't know. So
whatever you want. Go ahead.
Okay, and then?
I mean, first of all, if your child displays a lot of difficult behaviors, they're displaying it everywhere. And if they're school-age children, you're getting a lot of conflict from school. You get calls from the teachers, maybe difficulties with friends. You probably experience the same thing at the Spirit Center or your church if you go there. It's an ongoing everyday thing. And as much as you love your child, it's something that's upsetting to you as well, right? Because you're trying to be a good parent and like, oh my God. And then you come to the gospel at home and you talk about love, acceptance, Jesus. And all that comes out for your child is how horrible my behavior is when I'm with Jesus. Yes, you have to address it. You may have to give consequences. That's all part of it. But it shouldn't preclude them from participating or being in the gospel. And as with anything in life, if your child displays negative behaviors, they're not going to stop overnight, or they're not going to stop just during the gospel. It's going to be a process. So you have to anticipate it and work through it. So you talk to your child beforehand, expectations and consequences if they misbehave. It's not because they're misbehaving at the gospel. It's not because they're misbehaving when praying. It's because they're misbehaving. So you bring it back to the behavior, not that context, because you don't want them associating Jesus and then I'm bad and Jesus doesn't love me because I'm bad. You want to associate I misbehaved, therefore I had consequences, because there's expectations of behavior anywhere, at school, at sleep time, at dinner time, at the restaurant, at the birthday party, at the gospel. Your consistent message to your child is there's a behavior expectation everywhere, and there's consequence for breaking that expectation. It also applies for the gospel, not because of the gospel, but because of the behaviors. I hope it explains.
Gláucia, would you like to add anything?
Absolutely. No, thank you so much, Ligia, for that perspective. Also, I wanted to add that first, every behavior has a function, right? So the child, it's not the behavior is not the child, right? So the behavior is trying to send a message. What is that message? Be curious. There's something your child is trying to tell you. So I'm going to use the words of Daniel Siegel, which is a psychiatrist that I love. And he wrote the book, The Whole Brain Child. And I do recommend for the parents that want to learn a little bit more about psychology in terms of child development. And he says, connect before correct. And isn't that what Jesus did? Isn't that what Jesus did with every human being? Right? This is exactly how we want to role model. Connect what is underneath that behavior for your child. Embrace, connect your child, and try to understand what that's coming from. Because there's something they want to tell you that they don't know how, because developmentally their brain is not developed yet. It actually stops developing by age 25. So there's so many years, so you're going to have to be there up frontal cortex part of the brain and help them to understand that. So that's my little suggestion that I give.
My child is 27, and I'm still her frontal cortex. She calls me, what happened? Oh, no, did you do that again? Oh, my God, okay. Let's, manage the situation. How do we put up the fire, and what can we do so this won't happen again?
Right.
Make it better. And that happened again, I go home. And she has some basic knowledge of spiritualism. How many reincarnations it's gonna take?
Right. It's all
because you stop doing that.
You learn by repetition, right? You learn by repetition, and
you will.
You make mistakes. Absolutely, yeah.
Of reincarnation. Well, ladies, this was amazing. So exciting. We learned so much. And please, everyone, share this. Share this with parents, educators, and share this with the world. And remember to subscribe to our channel. Again, you go to videos and you have all the videos about the gospel at home. And guess what? If you have a friend that does not speak English and speak Spanish, we have this in Portuguese, Spanish, English, and French, right? And we hope in the future we're doing more languages. So thank you, Ligia. Thank you, Gláucia.
You're welcome.
And let me take off this banner here. So, and don't think this is the end, because we're going to be inviting you for more chats about this. All right. And you at home, thank you so much. And we ask our friends to stay here a little bit and have a blessed day, blessed evening, wherever you are. God bless you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for showing up.